Now, moving on to our first pillar of object-oriented programming, which is abstraction. This is the process of taking away or removing characteristics from something in order to reduce it to a set of essential characteristics. Well, you may ask yourself, what does this mean? Well, this is normally determined by your business requirements on your application. I've put together some requirements here, and this is relatively simple, but the business requirement states that we have a bank application which requires us to have customers. All they care about is storing the first name, last name, address, some kind of ID, tax ID, social security number, whatever type of ID is relative to you, and then that each customer has a bank account. And you can see the bank accounts has a balance and also stores what type of bank account it is, whether it's checking or savings. Now we're going to move on to Visual Studio now, and I'll give you a working example of this. Okay, well, let's get into our live demonstration of abstraction. We have to abstract the customer and bank account classes. So I'm going to start off and add a new folder and call this models. And I'm going to create a new class called customer, and then we're going to start adding the properties for the customer we needed, which was first name, last name, address, tax ID, and then each customer also needed a bank account. So I'm going to show you a little shorthand trick. If you type prop, and you'll see there's some templates in Visual Studio that allow you to generate code on the fly. So if you type prop and hit enter, then it'll generate the property for you, and then our first name is a type of string and the name is first name. And let's do this for the others. Last name, address, about that, tax ID, and finally our bank account. So we haven't created the bank account class yet, but I'm going to go ahead and type bank account, which will be our class name, and let me start with the word prop, bank account, and we're going to call this one account. And notice that the bank account is in red because we don't have any classes with that name. But if you right click on it and go to generate and generate class, Visual Studio nicely creates the class for us. So now we just need to add our bank account abstractions. So we'll do the same thing, prop, and we need balance and type. So I'm going to use a type decimal for balance and a string for the bank account type. And voila, there's our two class abstractions. We have everything based on the business requirements we needed. We needed to store the first, last, address, tax ID number, and then the account information, which we've created a bank account class for each of the customers. And now, to demonstrate these, I have a little user interface that I created, a form interface, and you can see that we have text boxes for our customer, all our customer information, and all of our bank account information for those customers. So let's add some implementation to the view customer. So I'm going to double click it, and it'll generate a method, a click method stub, click event. And so in order to create a customer has to have a bank account as well. So I'm going to create the bank account first, but notice that I've typed bank account, but because the bank account is in the models folder, we'd have to start typing models period bank account. But if you just type bank account and hold control and press period, it'll give you a little shortcut to add a using statement to the models folder, and then we won't have to reference models. So that comes in handy. Okay, so now we have a bank account, a new instance of bank account. I'm going to add some data to it. So we're going to set the initial balance to 100, and then we also need to set the account type, and I'm going to say checking, account. Now we can create our customer, and going to call him customer, but I'm actually going to move this and make this a global variable within the class, and set it to private because I only want this UI to have access to this instance that we create. And down here we'll create a new instance of that customer, and now I just need to set the customer's properties. So let's start with first name equals John, last name Doe, we'll put him on Main Street, and give him a tax ID. Thanks. FJ6, some random character string. And finally, we can add the account to him. So the account is going to equal, and notice account has to be an instance of bank account, which we created up here. So we can assign the account, this checking account we created, to this customer. And now I just need to add this to the UI, to the text boxes. I'm just going to copy and paste some code that I wrote earlier for this, and we're just setting the text boxes, the first name and the text property of the text box, to the first name property of the customer object. Same with last name, address, tax ID. Here's the balance. Notice it's customer dot account, because account is a property, is its own instance of bank account attached to a customer, and we're going to display the balance. Because balance is a decimal, you can use formatting within the toString and provide a parameter to that of uppercase C, and it'll format it nicely. And then finally our account type. And let me go ahead and run this, and we can see here's our bank. And let's go view customer, and voila, John Doe is displayed. We can see all this information, but we have these two other buttons that I'm going to implement now, the draw $50 and deposit 100. So let's go and add implementation for that. So let's start with the draw 50. Now what is going to happen is the customer.account.balance, and I'm going to type minus equals 50M. Now minus equals is shorthand, and this statement is equivalent to saying that account balance equals account balance minus 50. These two lines of code are identical, but you can see that the shorthand one is much shorter and involves much less typing. And then finally we just have to update our display. So after the balance, the $50 has been subtracted, and then it can update the display. And let's go ahead and test this. So we click our view customer, he has a balance of 100, and now we can draw 50, and notice we reduce our count by 50, and we draw another 50, and obviously there's no business logic in place to stop them once they reach the threshold of 0, but we will address that in later tutorials. And finally, let's go ahead and implement our deposit. And I'm just going to go ahead and copy this again and use the plus equals shorthand, and we're going to deposit $100. Now notice that it appears like all our functionality is working. We can draw money and we can then deposit 100, but in our next tutorial, which covers encapsulation, we're going to move. Right now the balance is a public property, and I can go in here, and any class that creates an instance of the customer with the account can go in and reset this value by mistake. We can set the balance to $500, and then notice that now when we go in here we can draw fine, but when we hit deposit we're stuck on this $500 because this balance property is public, and we really need to move that responsibility back into the account class and expose methods that help us deposit or draw cash and not allow us to have this kind of implementation. But we will address it in the next video.